The next morning, Cena's sister woke up feeling a little more confident than the day before. The events of the previous day had left their mark, but they also gave her a sense of empowerment. She knew that she had faced something scary, and with her brother by her side, she could handle the challenges ahead. Breakfast was quiet but warm, filled with the comfort of family and the shared understanding of what had happened. John smiled at her across the table, a silent reassurance that he was always there to protect and guide her. As they prepared to leave the house, John reminded her to stay aware of her surroundings, to trust her instincts, and to remember that asking for help was a sign of strength. They walked to school together, a rare moment of calm before the day began. The streets were familiar, and the morning sunlight brought a sense of normalcy. His sister felt a little lighter, knowing that she didn't have to face the day alone. The memory of her brother stepping in yesterday gave her courage, and she could carry that feeling with her wherever she went. When they arrived at school, the atmosphere felt different. The bully from yesterday had heard about John's intervention, and his usual confidence had been shaken. The group of kids who had previously supported him looked uneasy, unsure of how to act. John stayed nearby as a silent presence, letting his sister walk confidently and assured. She noticed the subtle changes around her, the way some students gave her respectful glances, and she realized that standing up, even indirectly, could create change. She felt proud of herself for enduring the previous day, but also grateful for the support that had made it possible. Throughout the day, John's sister focused on her classes and activities, but the experience from yesterday stayed in her mind. She thought about how fear had felt and how it had changed when her brother appeared. She realized that courage could take many forms. Sometimes it was standing up physically, sometimes it was asking for help, and sometimes it was maintaining composure in a difficult situation. The lessons from the encounter were becoming a part of her, shaping her perspective and her confidence. During lunch, she shared a few details with friends she trusted. They listened carefully, offering support and encouragement. The experience became an opportunity to connect with others, to remind them that no one should have to face fear or bullying alone. Her friends admired her bravery and the way she handled the situation. She felt a sense of solidarity, knowing that she had allies beyond her brother. The school environment began to feel safer, more aware, and more supportive. After school, John and his sister walked home together again, talking about the day and what she had learned. John praised her for facing yesterday with courage and reminded her that strength came in many forms. He emphasized the importance of self-respect and standing up for oneself, and also of knowing when to rely on others. His words were simple but powerful, creating a framework for her to navigate future challenges confidently. They stopped at a small park along the way home, a place that had become a symbol of calm and reflection. She took out her sketchbook and began drawing, pouring her thoughts and emotions into her art. John watched quietly, giving her space while offering gentle encouragement. He knew that creative expression could be as powerful as physical protection, helping her process emotions and build resilience. She smiled, feeling a sense of relief and accomplishment. The fear that had loomed over her was gradually replaced by hope and confidence. As the week continued, John's sister noticed subtle changes in how she carried herself. She walked with a little more confidence, spoke more openly in class, and engaged with friends without hesitation. The lessons from the encounter with the bully were influencing her daily life. She felt empowered not because the bully had disappeared, but because she had support, guidance, and the courage to face difficulties. Her brother's presence and intervention had shown her the value of trust, resilience, and love. John also took steps to ensure that the school envy Cena helped his sister up as the bully finally walked away, muttering under his breath and glancing nervously at his friends. She clung to him for support, still trembling from the intensity of the confrontation. Her knees were scraped, her backpack was messy, and her hands shook slightly. But the relief of having the situation end without further harm gave her a sense of security. John's calm, steady presence made all the difference. He gently adjusted her backpack and reassured her, telling her that she had been incredibly brave and that it was okay to be scared. He reminded her that facing such situations was never easy, but having the courage to stay composed and wait for help was a sign of true strength. As they began to walk home together, the streets felt quieter, though the tension of the earlier encounter lingered in their minds. John kept a protective hand lightly on her shoulder, not because she needed it, but because it gave her comfort. They walked slowly, allowing her to regain her confidence step by step. He asked her to talk about what had happened, to let him know every detail. She described the bullying, the pushes, the laughter, and the fear that had consumed her. John listened intently, nodding and validating her feelings, showing her that her emotions were real and important. He didn't rush her, and he didn't judge her reaction. His focus was entirely on her, helping her process the experience in a safe space. Along the way, John also reminded her that she had handled herself as best as she could under pressure. He explained that sometimes people act cruelly not because of anything we do, but because of their own insecurities and frustrations. It was important for her to remember that the bully's actions were not a reflection of her worth. She nodded, absorbing his words, feeling a sense of empowerment begin to replace the lingering fear. The thought of standing up to future challenges felt a little less intimidating now. When they reached the familiar streets near their home, John suggested that they stop at a small park for a moment. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow across the playground and benches. He wanted to give her a chance to breathe, to feel safe, and to regain a sense of normalcy. They sat on a bench together, talking quietly. John asked her what she enjoyed doing most after school, encouraging her to think about positive activities that could help her feel confident and calm. She mentioned drawing, her favorite way to escape and express herself. John smiled and praised her for maintaining her passion despite the challenges she faced. After a few minutes of sitting quietly, John suggested they take a slightly different route home, one that was more open and well lit. He explained that it was always a good idea to stay aware of surroundings and avoid areas where trouble might arise. But he reassured her that he would always be there to support her. She walked beside him, feeling a sense of protection and care that was difficult to put into words. The weight of the day's events was still present, but having him by her side made it manageable. As they neared home, John spoke about the importance of standing together against bullying. He explained that sometimes people need help to understand the impact of their actions, and that it was important to seek support from trusted individuals. He encouraged his sister to talk to teachers, friends, or family whenever she felt unsafe. His calm guidance made her feel empowered rather than overwhelmed. She realized that asking for help wasn't a weakness, but a smart and brave choice. Once inside their home, the familiar warmth and smells provided immediate comfort. John helped her settle in, making sure she felt safe and secure. They sat together at the kitchen table, talking about what had happened and reflecting on how she had handled the situation. John emphasized that while the experience had been frightening, it had also shown her resilience and courage. He reassured her that she had the right to feel safe and respected everywhere, and that no one had the right to make her feel otherwise. John also talked about the bully's perspective, carefully explaining that sometimes people act out because of their own insecurities or difficulties. He made it clear that understanding this did not excuse the behavior, but it could help her respond with clarity and confidence if similar situations occurred in the future. His words gave her a new perspective, helping her feel more in control of her reactions and emotions. She began to see that courage could take many forms, not just confrontation, but also patience, awareness, and knowing when to seek support. Throughout the evening, John continued to offer guidance and reassurance. He encouraged his sister to focus on her passions, to continue drawing and exploring her creativity. Jesus suggested that she could even use her art as a way to process her emotions. Turning John, Cena could feel the tension in the air as he stepped closer to the group of kids surrounding his sister. Every detail mattered, from the way the bully stood to the nervous whispers of the onlookers. He didn't rush in. Instead, he allowed his presence to speak for him. His height, his calm demeanor, and the quiet confidence he carried made the bully pause, just for a moment, long enough for John to assess the situation. The bully had been feeding off fear and intimidation for weeks, but John's approach was different. He didn't yell or threaten. He simply stood there, steady, a protective wall between the chaos and his sister. His eyes met the bully's, firm but not angry, showing authority that didn't require aggression. The crowd felt the shift immediately. The laughter faded, the whispers grew, and the energy of the situation began to change. John took one careful step closer, his movements deliberate and controlled. The bully tried to maintain his posture, but his confidence wavered. He shifted, his weight uncomfortably. glancing at the kids behind him for support, but they looked unsure. Some were silently questioning whether they should have been part of this, others simply frozen by the tension. John knew that the bully was assessing whether to stand his ground or retreat, and he needed to give him a reason to choose the latter. He spoke again, calm and clear, asking the boy to step back and leave his sister alone. His voice was steady, carrying authority without hostility. The words themselves were simple, but the delivery was powerful. The bully tried to bluff, attempting to regain his composure, but it was clear that the presence of someone as confident and strong as John disrupted his plan. The smaller kids in the group began to inch away, sensing that the confrontation had shifted and the balance of power had changed. John's sister watched closely from a short distance, still trembling slightly, but starting to feel a glimmer of hope. She could see her brother's calmness and strength, and it gave her courage. She adjusted her backpack, holding her sketchbook tightly, and straightened her posture just a little. The fear that had gripped her moments ago was still there, but it had lessened. John had created a space where she could feel safe, and that alone made her feel empowered. The bully's eyes darted around, searching for an escape route, a way to save face, or someone to rally his courage from. But there was no support. Only the steady presence of John and the silent curiosity of the other kids. The tension in the air was thick, almost tangible, but John remained unshaken. He did not raise his voice or make sudden moves, knowing that calm confidence would outmatch the bully's aggression every time. After a few tense moments, the bully tried one last time to intimidate John. He straightened up, muttered a few words, and shifted his gaze toward his friends, seeking solidarity. But his friends looked hesitant, unsure whether to back him or flee. The lack of support weakened his stance even more. John didn't need to act. The bully's hesitation was already a sign of defeat. The balance of power had shifted entirely, and John's sister could sense it too. She started to breathe a little more easily, realizing that the threat was losing its grip. John slowly closed the gap between himself and the bully, maintaining steady eye contact. He didn't move aggressively, but his presence was undeniable. The bully's jaw tightened, his confidence slipping away. He realized that his usual tactics would not work against someone who was calm, strong, and focused. The realization brought a mix of frustration and fear. For the first time, he felt truly confronted by someone who could easily overpower him, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically. The surrounding kids watched in silence, captivated by the unfolding situation. Some of them had never seen someone handle a bully so effectively without resorting to violence. They whispered to each other, some nodding, others simply observing. John had not only protected his sister, but had also demonstrated a different kind of strength, one that didn't rely on yelling, shoving, or intimidation. It was a quiet, commanding presence that made the bully reconsider every move he had planned. Finally, the bully muttered a few words under his breath, trying to save face, but it was clear that he had no intention of continuing. He glanced at his friends again, but they had already started stepping away. The bully had no choice but to retreat. He took a hesitant step back, then another, until he was finally out of the immediate area. John's sister could hardly believe it. The tension that had been so suffocating just moments ago was lifting, replaced by relief and gratitude. John turned his attention fully to his sister, walking over to her and placing a hand gently on her shoulder. He helped her adjust, ensuring she was steady on her feet. She clung to him slightly, still shaken but immensely grateful. He reassured her that everything was okay now, praising her for staying strong despite the fear. He reminded her that she had done her best and that she had nothing to be ashamed of. His calm words and firm presence helped her feel secure, knowing that the danger had passed. As they walked away from the scene, John continued to speak softly to his sister, helping her process what had just happened. He asked her to explain everything that had occurred, listening carefully without interrupting. She described the bullying, the shoves, the teasing, and the fear she had felt. John nodded, validating her feelings and acknowledging her bravery. He made it clear that she had nothing to fear as long as he was there to protect her, and that, together, they would ensure the bully could not continue to threaten her. The walk home was quiet at first, the siblings absorbing the intensity of the recent events. John spoke in a reassuring tone, helping his sister understand that facing a bully was never a sign of weakness, but a moment where courage and support mattered most. His words carried weight because they came from someone she trusted deeply. She felt a growing sense of confidence knowing that she was not alone, and that she had a brother who would stand by her no matter what. By the time they reached home, the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink. The familiar sights and sounds of their neighborhood provided comfort, a sense of normalcy returning after the tension-filled encounter. John and his sis John Cena had just finished his workout at the local gym, feeling the satisfying ache in his muscles after a long session. He loved working out, not just for his strength but for the focus it gave him. Today had been a good session and he was wiping sweat from his forehead as he stepped outside. The late afternoon sun was warm on his face and the streets of his town were quiet. He decided to take a different route home, a longer path that wound past some of the neighborhoods where kids often walked from school. It was a peaceful walk, and he liked observing the world around him while thinking about his day. As he walked, he noticed a small crowd gathered near the corner of a street. Something about it caught his attention, something that made him slow his pace and focus. In the middle of the group he saw a familiar figure, his sister. She was surrounded by a few older kids and one of them, a larger boy with a mean look, was clearly causing trouble. John's heart sank. He had known that she had been facing problems at school, but seeing it unfold in person made it different, more immediate. He could see the fear on her face, the way she tried to keep her balance and protect herself from the bully. He took a deep breath, keeping calm though inside he felt a surge of anger. He knew that if he rushed in without thinking it could make things worse, but he also knew that he couldn't let her face this alone. He started walking toward the group with measured steps, making sure not to startle anyone or escalate the situation before he got there. As he got closer, he could hear the bully shouting at his sister, mocking her and pushing her around. John's muscles tensed and his jaw clenched. He had seen enough. It was time to step in, but he needed to do it carefully. From a distance, John observed the group, noticing the dynamics. Some of the kids were laughing along while others were hesitant, unsure what to do. The bully was confident, leaning toward his sister and trying to make her stumble. John could see the way his sister tried to shield herself and hold on to her belongings. He felt a mixture of pride and worry for her. She had always been strong in her own way, brave enough to face her day despite knowing there would be challenges, but she needed someone to protect her in moments like this. As he approached, John's presence began to register. The bully glanced up, seeing a tall, strong figure walking toward them with a calm but intense look. For a moment he seemed unsure, as if recognizing something familiar yet unfamiliar at the same time. John's steps were confident, deliberate, and measured. He didn't shout or threaten. He didn't need to. The energy he carried was enough to make the bully pause. John stopped a few feet away from the group, his eyes fixed on the main troublemaker. He spoke in a firm, controlled voice, asking the boy to step back and leave his sister alone. The bully tried to act tough, raising his chin and pretending not to care, but John could see the uncertainty flicker in his eyes. The surrounding kids also sensed the shift in energy, the way the situation had suddenly changed with John's arrival. Whispers started to ripple through the group, and some of the onlookers moved closer to watch, curious about what would happen next. John didn't move any closer yet. He knew that showing too much aggression too soon could provoke the bully. Instead, he kept his stance solid. His eyes locked on the boy, his hands relaxed but ready to act if needed. He could feel the tension in the air, the mix of fear, embarrassment, and defiance. He spoke again, repeating his message calmly but with authority. The bully tried to laugh it off, attempting to regain control, but his voice wavered slightly. John's presence was enough to unbalance the situation without a single act of violence. Meanwhile, his sister watched from a few feet away, still trembling but beginning to breathe a little easier. She had hoped he would arrive, and now that he was here, she felt a surge of relief. She could see his calm and composed manner, and it gave her courage. She stood a little taller, adjusting her backpack and clutching her sketchbook more firmly. She knew that with him there, she was no longer entirely vulnerable. The fear that had weighed on her all day was starting to lift, replaced by a sense of safety. John continued to maintain his position, carefully observing the bully's reactions. He noticed that the boy's confidence was waning. The small group of kids behind him looked uncertain, some whispering to each other, others taking a step back. John could sense that the bully was beginning to feel trapped, unsure of how to proceed with someone as calm and assertive as John watching him. He didn't need to raise his voice or make threats. The quiet strength and controlled presence were enough to shift the power dynamics. Finally, the bully's bravado started to crack. He muttered something under his breath, trying to save face, but it was clear he didn't have a plan to continue the confrontation. John took one small step closer, maintaining eye contact, giving him the option to back down peacefully. The surrounding kids were silent, watching in anticipation. The tension was thick, but John remained composed, his demeanor steady and unwavering. After a few tense moments, the bully seemed to make a decision. He muttered an excuse, quickly glanced at his friends, and turned to leave. The group started to disperse, and the fear and embarrassment on the bully's face were evident. John's sister watched in disbelief, relief flooding through her. The situation had been intense, but with her brother there, it had ended without further harm. John finally turned his attention to his sister, walking over and gently placing a hand on her shoulder. He helped her straighten up, making sure she was steady on her feet. She clung to him slightly, still shaken but immensely grateful. He reassured her that everything was okay now and praised her for staying strong despite the fear. He reminded her that she had nothing to be ashamed of, and that she had handled John Cena's sister had always been the quiet type. She was the kind of person who liked to keep her head down, focus on her schoolwork, and spend her free time drawing in her notebook. Her sketches were full of imagination, little worlds she created when the real world felt too overwhelming. She loved the simplicity of her small town, the familiar streets, and the people she knew. But even in a calm town, trouble could find someone, and unfortunately, trouble had been following her for a while. At school, there were kids who didn't understand her quiet nature. They thought being shy made her weak. They would whisper mean things when she walked by, and sometimes they would trip her or snatch her books just to get a reaction. It wasn't every day, and it wasn't always severe, but over time it added up. It made her anxious to walk down certain hallways or go outside at recess. She tried to ignore them, hoping that if she didn't react, they would eventually stop. But bullies rarely give up on someone they think is easy to target. One day she was walking home from school, carrying her backpack heavy with books and her sketchbook tucked safely inside. The sun was shining, but her mind was elsewhere, thinking about the homework waiting for her and the new drawing she wanted to start. She tried to focus on anything other than the group of kids she saw loitering by the corner. Her stomach tightened. She had seen them before, the same kids who had made her life difficult over the past few weeks. One of them, the main bully, had a mean look and a reputation for being aggressive. Her pace quickened without her even realizing it. She tried to keep calm, reminding herself that she had faced them before and that nothing too serious had happened. But as she passed the group, the main bully stepped in front of her path, blocking her way. His smirk told her that this time would be different. She felt a chill run down her spine. The group laughed behind him, echoing his confidence and cruelty. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked in a loud, mocking voice. His tone was not a question but a challenge. She took a small step back, trying to squeeze past him, but he moved to block her again. Her heart was pounding, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her backpack straps. She didn't want a scene, but she knew she couldn't just stand there either. Suddenly, the bully shoved her lightly at first, just enough to throw her balance off. She stumbled but caught herself on a nearby fence. The group behind him laughed, some pointing fingers, some whispering to each other about what would happen next. She could hear the whispers and the jeers mixing together, creating a wave of tension she wanted to escape from. "I said move!" the bully shouted. This time, the push was harder, and she fell to the ground. Her books scattered across the pavement. She felt the sting on her knees as she tried to shield herself. The bully leaned closer, his face twisted with mockery. She could see the satisfaction in his eyes, and it made her stomach churn. She wanted to scream, but the words caught in her throat. She had always believed that confronting bullies could sometimes make things worse. She tried to pick up her books, but another shove sent her sprawling again. Her backpack opened, spilling the contents even more. Her sketchbook was open, the drawings exposed to the mockery of the group. One of the kids laughed louder than the rest, pointing at a drawing of a fantastical creature she had imagined. The laughter felt like a sharp sting, worse than the shoves. She felt trapped, embarrassed, and alone, even though there were other kids nearby. Nobody stepped in immediately. Some watched quietly, unsure of what to do, while others avoided looking at all. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them away. She didn't want to give the bully the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She knew her brother John Cena would be furious if he saw her like this, but she also knew he was not around at the moment. She had to handle this herself, at least until someone came. Her hands shook as she gathered her books again, trying to put her backpack back together. The bully shoved her one more time, this time intentionally making her fall onto her side. She lay there for a moment, catching her breath, feeling a mix of anger, fear, and frustration. How could someone be so cruel for no reason? Why did he pick on her? She wanted to shout, to fight back, but fear held her down. She realized that standing up to him now would probably escalate things further. She just wanted to get home, to the safety of her house where she could be herself and not have to worry about anyone hurting her. Finally, the bully lost interest for a moment, distracted by something else, and the group started to scatter. She took the opportunity to stand, her knees scraped and sore, her hands shaking. She grabbed her backpack and sketchbook, holding them close to her chest like a shield. Her heart was still racing and her mind was spinning with everything that had just happened. She felt a mix of relief and lingering fear. She knew that this wasn't over. The bully would probably come back, and the thought made her stomach twist. As she walked the rest of the way home, her thoughts kept drifting to her brother. John had always been her protector, someone she could rely on no matter what. She knew that when he found out, he would be furious. He had always stood up for her before, but this time she hadn't been able to reach him. She wished he had been there. She imagined his presence now, calm but strong, walking up to the bully and telling him that enough was enough. Just thinking about it gave her a small sense of comfort, like a shield around her fragile confidence. By the time she reached the front of their house, her hands were scraped and her backpack was messy, but she felt a strange mix of relief and determination. She knew she couldn't let this happen again. She couldn't keep letting fear control her, but she also knew that she didn't have to face it entirely alone. She needed help, and she knew exactly who could give it. She walked inside, quietly, closing the door behind her, hoping that John would come home soon so she could tell him everything that had happened today. She knew that when he did, things were going to change, and maybe this bully would finally learn that she was not someone to be messed with. The quietness of the house was comforting, and she sat down at the kitchen table, trying to calm herself. She hugged her sketchbook, feeling a small sense of normalcy in the familiar lines and drawings she had created. But in the back of her mind, she knew that the day's events were just the beginning. She could feel a storm coming, one that would not just involve her, but her brother too. She didn't know exactly what would happen next, but she felt a flicker of hope. Because if there was anyone who could stand up for her and make the bully realize his mistakes, it would be John Cena. And deep down, she knew he would. Ed herself as best as she could until he arrived. As they walked home together, John and his sister talked quietly about what had happened. He asked her to describe everything, listening carefully and validating her feelings. She explained the bullying, the shoves, the teasing, and the fear she had felt. John nodded, acknowledging her experience and the courage it took to face it. He also promised to make sure the situation was addressed so that she would not have to face such threats again. His calm guidance and reassurance helped her feel more secure, knowing that she wasn't alone. By the time they reached home, the sun had begun to set, casting a warm glow over the town. John and his sister entered the house, the familiar smells and sounds providing comfort. She felt a sense of relief and a growing confidence that she could rely on her brother for protection, but also a recognition that she was strong in her own right. She had faced a difficult situation, and though it had been scary, she had survived. And now, with John by her side, she felt ready to handle whatever challenges might come next. Entered their home. the smells and warmth greeting them like a safe embrace. She felt relief and security, but also a newfound understanding of the strength her brother brought into her life. Inside, John sat with her at the kitchen table, listening as she recounted the events again, adding small details she hadn't mentioned while outside. He gave her the space to share her feelings, making sure she felt heard and validated. She spoke about fear, embarrassment, and frustration, and John acknowledged every emotion, helping her navigate the aftermath. He made it clear that the bully's actions were not her fault, and that standing up, even indirectly, had shown resilience. John's presence and support helped his sister shift her perspective. She realized that courage could take many forms, not just confronting someone physically, but having the strength to face each day despite fear. The experience, while frightening, became a lesson in resilience and trust. She learned that having someone who genuinely cared could change the outcome of even the most intimidating situations. She felt grateful for her brother's guidance and protection, understanding that his intervention had not only resolved the immediate threat, but had also empowered her to face challenges with more confidence in the future. As the evening settled in, John and his sister spent time quietly, drawing and talking. The weight of the day's events slowly lifted, replaced by a sense of togetherness and safety. She knew that while bullies might exist in the world, having someone to rely on made all the difference. John's calm, steady presence had been a shield, showing her that strength didn't always come from confrontation but from understanding, confidence, and protective care. The night ended with a feeling of relief and hope. The incident had been intense, but it had also strengthened the bond between them. John's sister felt safer, more confident, and ready to face the challenges ahead, knowing that her brother would always be there when she needed him. The events of the afternoon had shown her that courage was not just about standing up alone, but about knowing when to trust and lean on someone who cared deeply for her well-being, fear and anxiety into something beautiful and personal. She smiled at the thought, feeling a spark of hope. The day's events had been difficult, but they had also created an opportunity for growth and understanding. John reminded her that they were a team, and that she would never have to face challenges alone. He explained that standing up to bullies could take many forms, and that sometimes the most powerful action was simply knowing you had someone to rely on. His words resonated deeply, and she felt a sense of strength she hadn't known she possessed. She realized that her brother's support was not just about protection, it was about guidance, encouragement, and love. By the time the evening had fully settled in, the house felt quiet and safe. John and his sister spent the remaining time together, talking, drawing, and enjoying the simple comfort of each other's company. She reflected on the events of the day, recognizing that while the encounter with the bully had been frightening, it had also taught her important lessons about courage, trust, and resilience. She felt grateful for her brother's intervention, but also proud of herself for facing the situation with as much composure as she had. As night approached, John reminded her to get rest and take care of herself. He assured her that tomorrow was a new day, and that she could face it with confidence and support. The bond between them had grown stronger through the shared experience, and she felt reassured knowing that she was not alone. The fear that had dominated the afternoon had been replaced with a sense of safety, empowerment, and hope. The events of the day became a turning point. John's sister realized that while bullies might exist, they could not define her worth or dictate her actions. She had someone who genuinely cared for her well-being, guiding her with patience and understanding. The experience also reinforced the importance of standing up for oneself and others, creating a ripple effect of awareness and support. She felt ready to face the challenges ahead, knowing that courage, guidance, and love were always within reach. Onment remained safe and supportive. He spoke with teachers, explaining the situation and advocating for measures to prevent bullying. His calm but firm approach made a difference, encouraging the school staff to be proactive and attentive. The experience became an example for others, demonstrating that intervention and support could change outcomes. His sister felt reassured knowing that the adults around her were aware and ready to protect her. At home, the siblings continued to bond over shared experiences and daily activities. They spent time drawing, talking, and enjoying the comfort of family. John emphasized the importance of reflection, of understanding what had happened and learning from it. His sister began to see challenges as opportunities to grow, knowing that she had the strength and support to overcome them. The fear that had once held her back was now a tool for learning and empowerment. The days turned into weeks, and John's sister continued to develop confidence and resilience. The bully eventually stopped attempting to provoke her, and the school community became more aware of the importance of kindness and respect. Her experiences, while challenging, became a foundation for personal growth. She learned that facing difficulties was not a sign of weakness, and that seeking support was a sign of strength. She also realized the value of having someone to trust and rely on, someone like her brother who could guide and protect her. John and his sister reflected on the entire experience together. They discussed how fear, courage, and support intertwined, shaping how people respond to challenges. She understood that courage was not just about physical action, but also about mental strength, awareness, and knowing when to reach out. The experience had strengthened their bond and provided lessons that would last a lifetime. In the quiet moments at home, they often revisited the events, not to dwell on fear, but to recognize growth. She drew scenes of resilience, sketches filled with courage and determination, capturing the essence of what she had learned. John watched proudly, knowing that his intervention had not only protected her but also inspired growth, confidence, and empowerment. The encounter with the bully had become more than a frightening event. It had become a turning point in her life. By the end of the story, John's sister had transformed her fear into strength, her anxiety into awareness, and her experience into wisdom. The lessons of the past days remained with her, shaping her approach to life, relationships, and challenges. She knew that she could face difficulties with confidence, not because she would be alone, but because she had guidance, support, and inner courage. John Cena's protective and guiding presence had changed the course of her experience, leaving her stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever the future held.